Hi students, this is Karimunisa Sayer, Associate Professor in Zoology. Welcome back to our session 34 under Zoology Paper 2, which includes NANCA data part 2. So in this session, we are going to learn this life cycle of sea star or Astreus. So why do we want to learn the life cycle in sea stars? Definitely, during the session and after the session, you will learn to appreciate how the life cycle of an animal involves indirect development when the eggs are said to be microlethal. That means they have very little amount of yolk. So because of insufficient storage of yolk, unlike the macrolithical eggs of birds, for example, where when the eggs hatch, you can see the young one which exactly resembles the adult. But here in the case of microlithical eggs, where the yolk is not sufficient for the complete development of the eggs into young ones, thereby the eggs hatch into an intermediate stage of the animal that is called larva. So, the animals with the microlithical eggs usually they have indirect development. Moreover, this development of microlithical eggs also saves the species in terms of their consumption by the other animals in the seawater. As we all know, starfishes are marine animals. Suppose if they happen to have macrolithical eggs with lot of yolks, the survival of these eggs, again, it would have become a problem. And here we don't see much of brooding behavior in the species. Though there's a little amount of brooding, parental care is not so well marked. So thereby, survival of the species is ensured because of microlithical eggs and also indirect development. So all these aspects, unique aspects of starfishes during their life cycle will be able to appreciate only when we study the life cycle of the animal in detail. Of course, before we go for the life cycle of Astreus, we must know the structure of sea stars. So we'll start with the fertilization. As we all know very well, most of the species of Astreus have only one breeding season in a year, and during the breeding season, females lay about 1.25 million eggs per hour, and males produce many more sperms, obviously. That means these sea stars they have very high rate of reproduction of fecundity. Again, why do you think these animals are producing their gametes in millions? Because when they have to produce their gametes in millions, they have to spend lot of energy. Such a small animal is spending so much of energy on its reproduction. Definitely, just because here we don't have any internal fertilization, so further gametes to fuse and form zygote, the chances are meek or less. So thereby, to ensure the continuity of the species, these animals they lay millions of eggs. Of course, all these eggs and sperms they'll not be able to fuse and form the zygote. So thereby, we have a less number of adults when compared to the number of gametes produced by the individual, that too per hour. So with this, we'll proceed further to ensure the fertilization of the eggs. Usually both males and females, they try to group together. And this behavior already we have discussed is called gregarious behavior, which is entirely different from the colonial behavior. So because they are gregarious, the chances of fertilization are more. But anyhow, both males and females, they lay their eggs and spermatozoa in the sea water on maturity, and the union of the male and female gametes occurs in the sea water. Thus, we describe fertilization as external. So, fertilization occurs outside the body of the animal. So, as we all know, after the fertilization, a diploid zygote is formed. The further development of diploid zygote into the adult takes place through a process called embryogeny. That is the formation of the embryo. Genesis means formation. So, formation of the embryo and also the metamorphosis. Embryogeny and also the metamorphosis is involved. Now, after the embryogeny, we'll see the formation of larval forms, and these larval forms they develop into adult through the metamorphosis. So coming to the embryogeny of Astreus, so the embryological development of Astreus is called indirect, as when the eggs hatch out, they hatch out into larval stages which are entirely having a different structure or morphology than that of their adults. That's why they have to undergo a complete change in the structure, that is called metamorphosis, to develop into adults. So thereby the development of Astreus is called indirect, and we see the fertilized eggs or zygote is spherical and half millimeter in diameter, and it contains very little amount of yolk. That's why it is called microlecithal. And also the yolk is distributed equally inside the egg. That's why it is called homolecithal. Homo means same. Same amount of yolk will be there in the cytoplasm of all the regions of the egg. And this egg therefore proceeds further by means of divisions called cleavages, a cleavage, to develop into embryo. Then what is the difference between a ordinary cell division and division of a zygote? Because zygote is also a single cell. Then why we are not calling it as a cell division? Why do we call it as a cleavage? Usually after the cell division, the two daughter cells, mitotic divisions, lead into the formation of two daughter cells. Here also the zygote, when it divides, obviously it forms two daughter cells which are having the same number of chromosomes. So there is nothing much difference between cleavage and the mitosis in terms of the cytokinesis and karyokinesis. But there are some differences. After the mitotic division, usually the two daughter cells formed are highly independent. But here in the cleavage, when the zygote divides, it leads to the formation of what we call blastomeres. And these two blastomeres are two cells. They'll be held together. They act as interdependent cells. If they become independent in the two-celled stage, if the two blastomeres get separated, in some cases there will be development of twins. Why? Because this, in the early stages of cleavage, the egg cells are not determined. So the eggs are said to be indeterminate. So they're not determined to form the particular part of the animal body. So thereby you must have heard about birth of twins and quadruplets in the case of humans also. So suppose after two divisions of the cleavage, there will be formation of four cells in the zygote, and these four cells they get separated, we have the quadruplets. So such type of cleavage is called indeterminate. Whereas there is another type of cleavage called determinate cleavage, where if we separate some of the blastomeres in the early stages of division or the cleavage, then those body parts will be missing in the developed individual. So in the later stages of embryogeny, usually the cells become highly determinate. That means if some of the cells are removed, maybe the individual will be born without a limb or so. So that type of cleavage is called determinate type of cleavage. I hope you have followed what is meant by indeterminate cleavage. Similarly, the cleavage in the case of sea stars is also described as holoblastic. Holo means complete. So when the zygote divides, the division will be complete. It will be completely dividing the egg. Suppose if there is a lot of yolk, then the presence of yolk may hinder the division of the zygote. In that case, the cleavages are called meroblastic cleavages. There is another type of cleavage which is not seen in the astreus. So here we have holoblastic cleavage. And because of homolecythal eggs, we also the divisions will lead to the formation of two equal blastomeres. That's why the cleavage is also described as equal. That means always we see the formation of daughter cells which are equal in size. And with regard to the plane of division, whether the cleavage, the initial cleavages, the first division, second, third, and fourth, so on, in which plane these divisions are going to occur. Based on that, we describe the cleavage as radial. If the egg is dividing from anterior to posterior, then it is called longitudinal division. If the egg is dividing horizontally, then it is called horizontal division. Here, the egg is dividing radially. That is from the center, usually, the cleavage proceeds towards the periphery. So thereby, the cleavage is called radial. I hope you have followed what is meant by cleavage and also what type of cleavage is found in the astreus. We describe the cleavage in astreus as holoblastic, equal, radial, and indeterminate. So after the cleavage, the zygote develops into a small ball of cells. But this ball of cells is a solid ball. It is not having any central cavity. So we can compare this morula stage with that of a shot put ball without any cavity at the center. But at this stage, the larva resembles mulberry fruit. That's why the larva is also called morula larva. So this morula larva will undergo a process called blastulation, during which it develops a central cavity called blastocele. So here, the shot put ball will be converted into football or volleyball by the development of a central cavity. That is the basic difference between morula and blastula. So here, During vasculation, you can see all these cells, they are arranged in a single layer. So now the blastula is nothing but a modified zygote with a single layer of cells called blastomeres arranged around a central cavity that is called blastocele. And apart from that, all these blastomeres, they develop cilia on their outer surface. So thereby, the blastula of Astreus is also called coeloblastula. So it is having a coelomic cavity, central cavity. That's why it is called coeloblastula. Usually, coeloblastula stage of embryo is reached by the eggs on the second day of cleavage. So at this stage, the eggs hatch. That means the eggs hatch in the blastula stage. Thereby, immediately the blastula will start swimming in the water. The coeloblastula possesses a fluid filled central space called blastocele, and it swims about freely. Now, the blastula undergoes embolic invagination. Embolic invagination means inward flow of cells. Then some of the cells, they start dividing and growing into the body of the blastocele. We have a football-like structure, or you all must be knowing about a smiley ball, rubber ball, which can easily be pressed on one side. So suppose if we press at one point the wall of the ball, it will develop some inpushing. Similarly, here by a process called emboly. Emboly means inward growth of the cells, and also by invagination, you can see slowly the blastula, which is covered by single layer, is attaining a two-layered cup-like structure. This two-layered cup-like structure of the embryo is called gastrula. So thereby, the gastrulation involves inward pushing of blastomeres of one side. The inpushing encloses a newly formed cavity called archenteron. So already we have blastocele. Apart from that, there will be formation of one more new cavity that is called archenteron, which occupies slowly the larger part of the blastocele. And this embryonic stage is called gastrula. So the gastrula now has an outer layer of ectoderm with ciliary cells and inner layer of endoderm. So we see here the formation of two primary germ layers. The newly formed cavity called archenteron or gastrocele communicates or opens outside by means of a aperture called blastopore. The blastopore changes its position with the elongation of the gastrula, and it becomes the anus of the larva. So thereby, this type of development of embryo is called deuterostomia. Suppose if the blastopore is retained as mouth of the larva, then the development of the larva is called proterostomia. So here remember, echinoderms, just like hyocardates, are deuterostomes. That means the blastopore becomes the anal opening of the developing larva. Apart from this opening, two more openings, that is mouth and hydropore. Mouth is the anterior opening of the alimentary canal. Hydropore As we know, it is the opening of the mesocele or the coelomic cavity. Two more openings will be formed during the embryogeny or embryogenesis. So moving further, during the invagination, the growing up archenteron buds off two coelomic pouches. So from the growing tip of the archenteron, you can see there will be formation of two pouches. Apart from that, they also pinch off or they also release some cells into the blastocele. These cells are called mesenchyme cells. So thereby, the growing archenteron at this stage is differentiated into a narrow proximal part, anterior part, and a wide posterior or terminal part. The proximal part, as usual, communicates to the exterior by means of blastopore, and in later stages, it is going to form the stomach and intestine of the larva. Whereas the wide terminal part of the archenteron expands and cuts off the newly formed coelomic pouches from the archenteron, leading to the formation of hydroenterocele. You can see the formation of the coelomic pouches which form hydrocele. Hydrocele is nothing but the mesocele, middle chamber of the coelom cavity of the adult. So thereby, what you should remember here is that the coelomic pouches are formed from the archenteron. That is why the development of the coelom is called enterocelic coelom. It is not the schizocelic coelom where the coelom is formed by the splitting up of the mesoderm. So here in the case of Astreus, we describe the origin of coelom as enterocelic coelom. It is formed from the archenteron or the gut of the larva. Now, these larvae, as we know, they are swimming actively in the water. So they take up their position to the right and left side of the archenteron. So the newly formed coelomic pouches, they'll be still found on either side of the archenteron. And later they give rise to the coelom and they'll be covered by mesodermal lining. Similarly, in the case of Astreus, from these coelomic pouches, we also see the development of the water vascular system. So at this stage, the larva is called diplurula larva because it starts swimming freely in the water because it has developed both the openings, mouth and anus, apart from the hydropore. That's why it can start feeding on its own. So it is not having stored yolk, or by this time all the stored yolk must have got exhausted, thereby it will start feeding on its own. So thereby the early Bipineria larva, which is developed from the gastrula, is called diplurula larva because scientists believe that the diplurula larval stage of the Astreus resembles most probably the ancestor. So as we all know, phylogeny repeats, antogeny repeats phylogeny. That means during the developmental stages, animals, they try to recapitulate the ancestral characters. That's why scientists believe that the early gastrula or late gastrula and early Bipineria or diplurula larva indicate the ancestral stage. So moving further, we can see the Diplurula larva will be transformed into Bipineria larva with the passage of time or with the further development. Let us see how the Bipineria larva is formed. So the early Bipineria or hypothetical Diplurula larva develops from the zygote in about 1 week's time. It is a bilaterally symmetrical larva which possesses a pre-oral and post-oral ciliated bands. You can see one pre-oral band, another one is post-oral ciliary band. Not only that, there is also pre-oral lobe or loop with the cilia. Slowly, this Diplurula larva develops arms or the projections emerging out of its body. Similarly, inside also you can see it is developing its alimentary canal. You can see in the Diplurula larva, alimentary canal is very simple. With a gut, mouth and anus, it is not differentiated into stomach, intestine. So here in the Bipineria larva, you can see there is a differentiation of stomach, intestine, anus and mouth. You can see there is a further development of alimentary canal. Similarly, the coelomic cavities also develop further. So when this larva develops these arms, then the Diplurula larva is called Bipineria larva. That means Bipineria larva will be able to swim more actively when compared to Diplurula larva. Coming to the structure of Bipineria larva. So as we know, Bipineria larva is actively swimming in the water. So thereby it will be free living and it will start feeding itself on its own. It feeds on small organisms like diatoms and algae by creating food-bearing currents by the ciliary tracts in the stomodial wall. So in its body, we have lot of ciliary arms which help the animal in feeding. It also swims freely by forwarding its anterior end with a clockwise rotation. After some time, the Bipineria larva transforms into the next larval stage, that is called Brachyolaria larva. So this Brachyolaria larva is also a free swimming larva. So it is also pelagic larva. But you can see very clearly, just like Bipineria larva, Brachyolaria larva is also bilaterally symmetrical. Though the adult is radial symmetrical, larvae are bilaterally symmetrical. It shows development of 3 brachyolarian arms with the suckers at its anterior end. Out of these 3 arms, 1 is median and 2 are called lateral arms. And at the tip of each arm, brachyolarian arm, this larva will have a disc for the attachment to the substratum. So we can say that Brachyolarian larva is nothing but the Bipineria larva with the brachyolarian arms. The larva shows all the arms that are seen in the Bipineria. That means apart from the brachyolarian arms, this larva also has, brachyolarian larva also has the arms which are already present in the Bipineria larva. So these, but here now you can see those arms, short arms of Bipineria have become very long and slender and they are also helpful in swimming because of the presence of the cilia. Now the digestive system also well developed, complete with the stomach and intestine. So that means brachyolarian larva also feeds actively. So thereby it swims for nearly 6 to 7 weeks of time. It keeps on swimming and feeding. Why? To gain the necessary energy required for the metamorphosis or the further development. So you can see during the larval stages, these larvae, they don't have any of the adult features. So if they have to develop themselves into adults or adult-like body, then they have to undergo a complete change in their body. So such changes constitute what we call metamorphosis. So thereby, the brachyolarian larva to undergo metamorphosis will settle on the bottom of the sea or some object by fixing its adhesive arms or brachyolarian arms. And the posterior end of the larva enlarges, you can see here, and it lifts to the right side up so that it develops what we call the anterior and posterior ends. Now, at this stage, the bilaterally symmetrical larva has to undergo a complete metamorphosis into a radially symmetrical adult. So, the larval mouth and anus will be closed, and a new mouth is formed on the left side of the larva, and a new anus is developed on the right side of the larva. So thereby, remember, the larval anus and mouth does not exist in the adult stage. Thereby, the left and right side of the larva subsequently get differentiated into oral and aboral surfaces of the adult. And at the same time, 5 lobes called arm rudiments, they start growing out around the oroaboral axis. In later stage, they also develop the skeletal elements, and these skeletal elements appear in the arm rudiments, and there will be also formation of radial canals in this arm rudiments. So in each arm, therefore, there will be 2 pairs of outgrowths from the coelom forming first tube feet, which serve for the attachment or for the locomotion. Further complex reorganizational changes result in the formation of adult astreus from the young starfish, which is having 5 rudimentary arms. So the newly detached. So at this stage, the brachyolarian larva, you can see here, it is showing slit here, formation of slit here, because of which the newly formed rudiment of sea star will get detached from the brachyolarian arms. At this stage, the young starfish will be very small in size. It will be less than 1 millimeter in diameter. Why? Because it is having only a central disc which is pentagonal with short stumpy arms. So we have come to the end of the session where we have learned the life cycle and also various developmental stages of sea star. So the young starfishes over the period of time grow into adults. They may turn into male or female. So I hope at the end of the session you have followed what is meant by indirect development, why indirect development occurs, and why the starfishes are having very high rate of fecundity. That means why they are laying millions of eggs and spermatozoa for the survival of the species in the sea waters. At the end of the session, here are some of the references which will help you in your future studies. Please don't forget to write your feedback to email ID zoology.bcu@gmail.com. Thank you.